Around 3 p.m. on that fateful day, that fateful Friday afternoon, what took place after that tragic accident that appears to have literally sucked 5 men involuntarily into a 30-inch subsea pipeline has affected all of our population. We as a country and as citizens have experienced many different emotions in just under the past 2 weeks. Unfortunately, 4 of our nationals, 4 of the divers, Mr. Kazim Ali, Mr. Yusuf Henry, Mr. Faisal Kurban, and Mr. Rishi Nagasa, did not survive this tragic accident. They tragically passed away, and we, the civic-minded citizens, who had at the time been hoping, praying, on the edge of our seats for their safe recovery and return, joined with their families and friends and colleagues in mourning for the unfortunate and tragic loss of these 4 lives. The 5th diver, Mr. Christopher Budram, who was actually providing safety support in the event that help was required, thank God, managed to survive this tragic accident. I take the opportunity once again to wish Mr. Budram well and to wish him a speedy recovery, as I'm certain that he would have had trauma and the continuing effects of trauma, as he has been negatively affected by this whole tragic accident. As we are all aware, I had a press conference as the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries on Monday, the 28th of February, where at the time I was very careful and continued to make a plea over and over in that press conference that we as a population avoid speculation, that we as a population allow those who are charged with the recovery of the 4 bodies to focus on their tasks at hand, and that we also gave the family, friends and colleagues of these 4 gentlemen the space so that they can go through their own emotions. Later that day, on the 28th of February, 3 of the 4 bodies were recovered. At that time, the Honorable Prime Minister came out and via a personal statement expressed his sincere condolences and expressed his emotions, and he too pleaded with us, the population, to have a sense of dignity and to avoid speculation and to allow these families to go through their process as we awaited the recovery of the 4th body, Mr. Nagasa. His body was recovered shortly thereafter. Again, as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago and as a government's representative, and I take the liberty on behalf of all of you, the right-thinking, civic-minded citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, I wish to record and express my sincere condolences on my behalf and on your behalves to the family, friends and colleagues of these 4 nationals who lost their life as a result of a tragic accident that took place on the 25th of February 2022. At every stage, I personally have made pleas with people to allow the families, friends and colleagues of these 4 gentlemen the space and the dignity to grieve. In fact, I did it up to the other day in 2 statements that I was compelled to put out by some of the behavior, in response to some of the behavior that unfortunately took place. It was just last Thursday, exactly here, standing here, at last week's post-cabinet press conference, that I announced that the cabinet had taken a decision earlier that day, on the 3rd of March 2021, to appoint the members to an investigative committee that was cloaked, and I repeat it, with the statutory authority from the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, being the regulator. The Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries has to do an investigation. The Cabinet took the decision at that time, last week Thursday, to appoint a 5-panel investigative team. We had given the assurance through me from as early as Monday the 28th of February that this committee would be comprised of 5 professionals with the necessary expertise and independence to carry out the investigative task at hand. What happened thereafter, in diplomatic language, is rather unfortunate, but telling, and I am certain that many members of this population would have taken careful note. Immediately after the announcement of this 5-panel committee, with the legal authority of the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, where there was not a single public servant or member of the ministry forming part of this investigative panel, being led by none other than the leader of the opposition, there became a barrage of what can only be described as disturbing, disappointing for some of us who still have hope that there will be some sense of decency by the opposition, and disgusting behavior straight from the leader of the opposition and a number of agents of the opposition. Immediately, the attacks began, again, as I say, from the leader of the opposition, and then from a 3-panel press conference of members of the opposition on Shell and BP, making the most wild accusations that Shell and BP should not participate on this panel, as they were licensed by the government of Trinidad and Tobago and had relationships with the government of Trinidad and Tobago. Every single citizen in Trinidad and Tobago has a relationship with the government of Trinidad and Tobago. Every single one of us. Shell and BP, as you are aware, are the 2 largest multinational oil and gas companies in Trinidad and Tobago and have been operating here for decades. Shell taking over BG's operations in or around 2017. I was very careful in advising the Cabinet as to what these representatives would be and who they would be. They would be representatives chosen by Shell and BP. I also said at the time they did not have to be constricted to being in Shell and BP's operations in Trinidad and Tobago. The choice of words of representatives of Shell and BP was to give them the broadest possible representation that they would choose, bringing their expertise as international oil and gas companies to this panel. I want to say that at all times, I personally was in contact with Shell and BP, and at all times, both Shell and BP remained prepared and committed to providing the resources to that committee. Thereafter, it was actually last week Saturday, because I recall coming out of a meeting where I did not have my phone for about 3.5 hours, to see a statement put out again by the leader of the opposition, and then followed by agents of the opposition, attacking the nominee of the Energy Chamber of Trinidad and Tobago. The Energy Chamber of Trinidad and Tobago was chosen as one of the contributors to this 5-man panel because they represent the energy sector in Trinidad and Tobago. I only had a conversation with them asking for a nominee and left it exactly there. It was on the 3rd of March, just before the Cabinet took its decision, that we received the nominee, Mr. Eugene Tier of the Energy Chamber. So Mr. Eugene Tier was announced on the 3rd of March, last week Thursday. What we saw that then took place on Saturday and for the next few days, led again by the leader of the opposition, was personalized attacks of the most spurious and scandalous nature on the nominee of the Energy Chamber. The Energy Chamber came out in defense of its nominee. We, the government, took a decision, because it was not our nominee, to say nothing. and the most spurious attacks trying to link myself, the Honorable Prime Minister, and even the chairman of TPHL to Mr. Eugene Tier. And those attacks continued after the Energy Chamber came out and said what they had to. The opposition, under the hand of both the leader of the opposition and their agents, then began the most unwarranted, unjustified, and actually shocking attacks on the Energy Chamber that culminated in a statement being issued by the UNC opposition attacking each of the board members of this independent body, the Energy Chamber of Trinidad and Tobago. And the suggestion, the most ludicrous suggestion, which continued up to yesterday or day before by the leader of the opposition and her agents, that the Energy Chamber contained P&M agents. I reject that. It is condemned. As a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, I hung my head in despair at the type of behavior I have seen over the last 7 days to attack two of the largest international multinational oil and gas companies, BP and Shell, and to suggest that they would do anything other than provide independent expertise when requested by the people of Trinidad and Tobago is shocking. The attacks that are unwarranted and unjustified on Mr. Tier, going so far as to say because I represented him in a case 8 years ago, which quite frankly I did not even recall, but as I say, he is the pure nominee of the Energy Chamber, and then the leader of the opposition on Monday of this week making the most ludicrous, absurd allegations that because he may be a property owner in a whole scheme of properties in Tobago where the Prime Minister also owns a property, and as a result of that they are neighbors. They are not neighbors, they are not physically neighbors. The Prime Minister does not live there, and it has nothing to do with that whatsoever. But take note, population, because what you saw was an attack on a civic-minded citizen who is prepared once again to give public service. He is the former past president of the Energy Chamber. He has had a decorated career in the energy sector. In fact, I had to negotiate against him when we came in 2015 or shortly thereafter, when he began to represent Massey's interests and we were dealing with the whole CGCL issue. So to suggest that he was biased, we reject, but that is all history. I took the time to outline some of this so that you, the population, would understand what led to the Prime Minister, the Honorable Prime Minister's decision that he announced to us a couple nights ago, when he took a decision because of the attempts to make a circus out of a most serious investigation. And he declared that he would ask the Cabinet to consider and to approve a commission of inquiry into this tragic accident. We, the population, should pause and very carefully consider the type of behavior we've seen at a time where at least 4 families are grieving with the loss of their family members, as we've seen the funerals take place one after the other, and seen the pain and experience the trauma and emotion that these family members, the friends and the colleagues are going through out of a tragic accident. Who descended and what was done at every single stage and step of the way to attack independent people, important bodies and entities, to make the most spurious of allegations, which have now culminated in a decision, and I can announce it now, that the Cabinet, a short while ago, agreed and approved a commission of inquiry. And we have agreed to the establishment of a commission of inquiry to examine and inquire into all of the circumstances which led to the tragic incidents which occurred on Friday, February 25th, 2022, at facilities owned by the Pariah Fuel Trading Company Limited, located at number 36 Sea Line Riser on berth number 6, which led to the deaths of 4 employees of LMCS Limited. And just before I move on to discuss the Commission of Inquiry and the further appointments, I'd like to take the opportunity as a citizen who cares about this country very deeply, and as the current government representative charged with the responsibility for the Ministry of Energy, Energy Industries, to thank Mr. Shiv Sharma for accepting the call to duty to act as the chairman of that now scrapped investigative committee, as well as BP, Shell, and the Energy Chamber and its nominee, Mr. Eugene Tier, for accepting the call to duty and being prepared at every step of the way. I was having several conversations a day with the leadership of BP and Shell in Trinidad and Tobago as they worked out who would be the best representatives on this committee. I thank you all for being willing to give your service. Mr. Sharma, the Energy Chamber, BP, Shell, and Mr. Tia. I'd also like to say, because they're trying to form part of a conversation, that all of the statutory bodies that are charged with a responsibility and a duty to conduct investigations into this incident have been doing so. The suggestions that OSH, the Occupational Safety and Health Authority, are not doing their investigation is completely untrue. They actually had representatives participating very early o'clock from Friday, the 25th of February, and continuing throughout, and that then turned into the appropriate statutory OSH investigation. It has been taking place and will continue to take place until they deliver their report as they should. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, also during the course of the recovery exercise, was very present, and they are conducting their investigation into the incident. There is also the opportunity, or the option, let me put it that way, for coroner's inquest in accordance with the law. So the attempts by the opposition to call for the DPP, the police, and where's OSH are hollow and really empty barrels making a lot of noise, because all of the investigations are taking place. All of the statutory investigations shall take place. The Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, as I said, is the regulator and have a responsibility to do an investigation and to play a role. As you are aware, in less than 24 hours after the incident took place on Friday, I personally, as the Minister of Energy, Energy Industries, and as the representative of the government, made my way to Paria's facilities. As part of that, I also met with the family members and friends of the 4 divers and others. The permanent secretary, one of the permanent secretaries, and the director of petroleum operations from the Ministry of Energy, Energy Industries were very present on Sunday morning at Paria, and then the permanent secretaries, as well as staff from the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, continued to be in touch as part of the monitoring throughout the course of this operation. We will do our job in accordance with our statutory duties that the population can be assured of, and we will fulfill our statutory obligations and duties. On to the Commission of Inquiry. The Honourable Prime Minister announced, as I said, that he would be asking the Cabinet to approve a Commission of Inquiry, and we have done so today. The decisions, some of the decisions with respect to the establishment of this Commission of Inquiry. It is going to be a 3-man panel. The following persons will comprise the Commission. It shall be chaired by a regional, I dare say legal luminary, the Honourable Mr. Justice C. Dennis Morrison, OJ, which is Order of Jamaica, CD, QC, Queen's Counsel. The Honourable Mr. Justice Dennis Morrison will chair the Commission of Inquiry. He will be assisted with another commissioner, Mr. Gregory Wilson, who is a subsea specialist. And the third member, we're hoping, will be a representative from a specialist international investigative firm with experience in conducting investigations into accidents and incidents in large industrial settings, especially in oil and gas. So we are seeking to locate an international investigator who has the necessary expertise and experience to be the third member of this panel in investigating incidents such as this, large industrial accidents, oil and gas accidents, and anything related to this. We have already had conversations with a couple firms, and we continue to pursue those discussions. We've taken the precaution in saying that the quorum of this commission shall be constituted by 2 members, because we don't want it to be held back if we're unable to find a willing participant who is an international investigator, but it is being pursued. Mr. Dennis Morrison, just to give you all an idea of the caliber of individual, he was appointed to the Court of Appeal of Jamaica, direct from private practice in 2008, and was president of the Court of Appeal in Jamaica from January 2016 up until his retirement in December 2020. He has also served as a judge of the Court of Appeal of Belize, acted as a judge of the Eastern Caribbean Court of Appeal, is currently a judge of the Court of Appeal of the Cayman Islands, and was appointed the president of the Court of Appeal of the Turks and Caicos in March 2021. He is also a member of the Regional Judicial and Legal Services Commission. And his CV goes on and on and on. But that gives you an insight into the caliber of the gentleman who has agreed to chair this Commission of Inquiry, Cecil Dennis Harrington Morrison, Queen's Counsel. Mr. Gregory Wilson has 25 years of diversified experience with in-depth knowledge of the subsea and subsea construction industry. He has worked in that 25 years. He's also been part of incident management teams in response. He has ROV tooling specialist expertise. He has been a diver in deep sea dive operations in the oil and gas sector, senior diver, a ROV engineer. In short, he has worked extensively in subsea operations, including diving, for the last 25 years. Those are so far the 2 appointed commissioners who will sit on this Commission of Inquiry. The Cabinet has decided to appoint Mr. Ramesh Lawrence Maraj to be the lead counsel to the Commission, and he is to be assisted by attorneys at law, Mr. Ronnie Bissessa and Ms. Vijaya Maraj. We have taken a decision that the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries and the Attorney General will work to develop the specific terms of reference for the Commission, but the Cabinet has outlined the guidance as to what should be encompassed in those terms of reference, and subsequently the terms of reference shall be provided. And I hasten to add that in drafting the Cabinet note and looking at least 5 other commissions of inquiry in the past, including from the UNC administration, that ability for 2 Cabinet colleagues and their offices to collaborate to formulate the terms of reference was found as precedent in the CLICO HCU Commission of Inquiry, Hindu Credit Union Commission of Inquiry. The Secretary, there will be a Secretary of the Commission of Inquiry designated and appointed in accordance with Section 6 of the Commission of Inquiries Act, Chapter 1901. The Commission of Inquiry will be provided with such staff as may be required to support the work of the Commission. The Commission of Inquiry shall sit in public, but of course the Commission will be given the absolute discretion to determine whether to sit wholly or from time to time in public or sometimes in private. The Commission of Inquiry is being asked to submit its report to the President within the period of 6 months from its first sitting. And as is normal, the line ministry to handle the administrative arrangements for the Commission of Inquiry will be the Office of the Prime Minister. It is proposed that the Commission of Inquiry should examine and inquire into the following, amongst other things. And as I said, these are just the guidelines, and the Office of the Attorney General and Ministry of Energy will then formulate the terms of reference within these parameters. They should examine and inquire into the scope of works issued by PARIA for the exercise. They should ascertain the proposals and plans submitted by LMCS Limited to conduct the works at the material site. They should examine generally the policy, procedures, practices, conduct relating to the employees and organized labor for these types of maintenance exercises for PARIA and for other companies likewise. They should identify the precise facts and circumstances which led up to and resulted in the loss of life, and whether this was reasonable and justifiable in the particular circumstances. They will examine all of the decisions and actions taken after it became clear that the 5 LMCS Limited divers went missing. They will investigate the nature, extent, and application of any standing orders, policy considerations, legislation, or other instructions in dealing with the situation which gave rise to this incident. They will identify whether PARIA and LMCS employed sufficient safeguards and measures to ensure the safety of its contracted employees, property, and the prevention of the incident. They will determine the adequacy and mechanical integrity of equipment utilized by LMCS. They will determine the adequacy of LMCS's plans utilized for the operation. They will identify whether by act or omission any identified or unidentified party directly or indirectly caused loss of life. They will examine the role played by PARIA and LMCS through its respective units individually and collectively in dealing with this incident. And they will examine all other material circumstances leading up to and surrounding the incident that took place on February 25, 2022, that led to the tragic death of the 4 LMCS divers, continuing up to the recovery of their bodies. PARIA have been told that they must cooperate fully with this Commission of Inquiry, and I was happy and pleased to be told in response that PARIA have been cooperating fully with all of the investigations taking place, including the 2 that I've already referred to, the OSH and the police investigations, and they have given the undertaking, and I'm certain they will fulfill it, that they will participate fully in this Commission of Inquiry. We would expect, and I'm asking here, that every party that has a role to play in this would cooperate fully with this Commission of Inquiry. So those are the decisions that have been taken. You've been given the contextual and historical backdrop as to how we arrived here. The country will now proceed to await the appointment of the commissioners for them to take their oaths of office and for them to take charge of their proceedings, aided by able senior counsel for this Commission of Inquiry to take place. Thank you very much. I'll take some questions at this stage.
Jules Brown, TV6 News. Minister, I'm just wondering why, for example, the Commission of Inquiry had not been the first option as opposed to the Investigations Committee?
I took the step of trying to go through step by step how this unfolded without getting into too much detail that persons would get lost in it. We have had many accidents in Trinidad and Tobago. In fact, I've seen the media reporting a number of accidents that have been unfortunate in the oil and gas industry in Trinidad and Tobago over time. The decision to go to a Commission of Inquiry must not be the first response. You have statutory bodies that are charged with the responsibility and the duty to conduct investigations. It was felt the Ministry of Energy is the regulator. Go and conduct an investigation utilizing experts, a panel of experts who have the necessary experience and, importantly, are independent to conduct that. I've heard it suggested that that committee would not have been able to call for evidence and call for persons. not true, because once you're regulated by the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, you can ask for it. For example, one of the recent incidents we had in the energy sector, and I've seen the media reporting it recently, is the I.A.N explosion. Why not have a commission of inquiry? Because that's not the first response to these things. Unfortunately, it has evolved this way, and the Prime Minister and the Cabinet have taken a decision based on the interference with the national psyche and the allegations, the wild, speculative and disgusting allegations being thrown. Let us have a commission of inquiry. As we know, it will be held in public. Everyone can and anyone can be summoned to attend. I'm certain we, the population, will be able to look on a daily basis, see what is happening. Persons will now be subject to cross-examination, subject to having to provide evidence in a public sphere. And let us not forget, as the Prime Minister said very clearly on Tuesday night, there's a serious cost associated with a commission of inquiry. And the taxpayers, we the taxpayers, will have to bear that cost.
Has anybody estimated what the cost would be in terms of very eminent persons and...
The truth is, it is impossible at this stage to estimate the cost. These persons have been contacted. Thankfully, they've agreed to serve. The conversation will now proceed to that. But as I was telling the Prime Minister and colleagues, I, in private practice, participated in many a commission of inquiry. So I have seen from a first-hand experience how these things evolve during the passage of a commission of inquiry. I was there in the PRCO Commission, the UF Commission, the Hindu Credit Union, CLICO, CLF Commission, the Commission into the Independence of the Judiciary by Lord Mackay, and the Health Commission under Judge Gafur. Those are just some that I personally, and you just see how they evolve over time as you begin to gather evidence, as persons then start to take alternate positions and their lawyers get involved and persons take procedural points. It is impossible to predict at this stage. I mean, we wanted to, and you all would recall, there was a 45-day period that we had put for the investigative team under the Ministry of Energy to get the job done, so we could have brought closure and made sure that they provided the population with it. At all stages, I said it would have been made public. This is the route we've gone, so now we must just stand by and wait for them to get on with it.
I mean, did the government relent too quickly? I'm saying this, a phrase you use, based, the Prime Minister took a decision based on interference with the national psyche and the wild allegations thrown. Did the government relent too quickly?
Not at all. I mean, we've seen, that's why I was careful at the outset to say this has been less than 2 weeks. We have seen how this tragic accident has consumed the population for 2 weeks. You have a decisive government, a decisive Prime Minister who took a decision, listen, we need to get on with this, listened to what is going on, and actually I saw a poll the other night that asked the population, do you agree with the Prime Minister's decision to go the route of a commission of inquiry? And 79% of those who participated agreed that this was the way to go. So it's not about letting it drag on and allowing people to, I was tempted to say bray, to continue to interfere with our psyche. A commission of inquiry has been appointed. A commission of inquiry is a decisive decision. Let's get on with it now.
And the question would be the 6 months. Would you, last time we were speaking, you had said that the 45-day for the other committee would have been an outside limit. Would you?
I was very careful in reading the language. It's within 6 months. So if they can complete within 6 months of the first sitting, I will tell you, I will caution you based on my experience. I have also been in commissions of inquiry where I have seen the governments, previous governments, have to go for extensions of time. The Coleman Commission comes to mind. I am certain if you go back and check, there were at least 2 extensions of that Coleman Commission. But we have asked in these parameters it be completed within 6 months of the first sitting. Let's see how it goes.
When will the first sit? Oh no.
That will have to, as I told the commissioners, that will be dependent on them. The government has done its part. We must provide the resources now. The commissioners must get together and they will direct the course. I'm sure they will have procedural hearings. They will have to say the rules that apply. They will have to decide who are the what we call the primary parties, give them opportunities to put in submissions, the lawyers will get involved, etc.
In light of your recollection, Minister, in terms of past commissions of inquiries, in terms of what happens when they submit their report, you've seen what happened in the past, but could you give a sense to the population in terms of this inquiry? When the commissioners give their report to the cabinet, what would then happen, or what could happen after?
I don't want to prejudge it, Jules. I don't want to speculate at this stage. My recollection, and I could be wrong here, is in the last 7 months of government, I think it is only one report of a commission of inquiry that was received by this government. That was the Coleman report, and we were given very clear advice by the Director of Public Prosecutions, which the Prime Minister actually made a statement in Parliament about not to make the report public because they were continuing police investigations, and the DPP was handling that. So we were asked not to do anything with that one at that stage. It is really up to the government at the time when they receive it and what they do. I do know, for example, with the UF Commission, certain parts of recommendations were implemented, but I don't want to speculate. I certainly don't want to be premature in what will happen with this report.
Also, you said, Minister, earlier, with regard to Mr. Thiel, in terms of the statements made by the opposition, you did not recall having been one of the members of the team for the appellants in that particular ETEC matter.
Yes.
Mr. Thiel was an appellant. If you had recalled at the time when the Energy Chamber gave its recommendation, would have that been a factor in terms of whether you said yes or no?
Absolutely not. I mean, when that was brought to my attention, Julian, why I'm smiling, during the course of my legal career, I represented a lot of people, and I'm smiling. Former clients, Ansel Roger, who loves to scream my name. I represented the OWTU in many, many matters, and personally represented Mr. Roger when the then Prime Minister, Kamala Persad-Bissessar, was looking in local parlance to bust his throat in 2014, and she, as the head of the government, wanted to have Mr. Roger fired from Petrotrin when he was the PG, the President General of OWTU. I represented him then. I went to court many a time to prevent injunctions for Mr. Roger. In fact, I was remembering I represented the steel workers trade union, and on the opposite side on a Friday evening was Michael Kwamina being led by a senior counsel and being instructed by Faris Al-Rawi. That is how the legal profession goes. But what I can say, and I will say it to Mrs. Persad-Bissessar, is at least I represented people, and my name is on a lot of judgments. In the Industrial Court, the Privy Council, the Court of Appeal, and the High Court. Can't recall seeing her name on very many.
Karen Brown Campbell from TTT News. Regarding the third commissioner, how soon do you all anticipate that
as soon as possible, but that is why we said that if it has to proceed with the two commissioners, then it will do so, and if we find an international firm that's willing to provide the support to those commissioners, then that's also going to be an option. But we are working assiduously to get an international investigator to agree, and I hope that we will be able to do so.
How far afield are you all looking for this international investigator?
As far as possible.
Basically, the commissioners are all not citizens of Trinidad and Tobago.
Mr. Wilson is a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago.
My clarification on that.
Yes.
Also, as well, Minister, in terms of the incident itself and Parian, in case you have said that I did not hear before previously, have you received a report, preliminary or otherwise, from Parian 1 and 2? As the incident, the tragedy caused Paria to revisit its operations across the board?
At the time, during the course of these incidents, I was receiving reports from Paria. Since the conclusion, I have not received an official report from Paria, meaning in writing, but there are investigations taking place. They have to do what they have to do. As I said, that part of the ministry's regulatory duty, we will make certain requests, etc. With respect to the second part of your question, the answer is yes. In fact, just after Cabinet today, I spoke to the chairman of Trinidad Petroleum Holdings Limited to get an answer to exactly that question, to make sure that they have been doing a review of what went wrong, what went right, and going through that whole process of an analysis of it. So if there's anything that they need to do, it be done.
Any similar type of work is taking place?
Not as far as I am aware, but I am not aware of what is going on with all of the pipelines in Trinidad and Tobago.
But at the very least, whether to rephrase the question, should any such work take place for the time being, while you're still looking at investigations and so on?
Throughout Paria's operations, I see no reason why not, once it is that they have been given the go-ahead at the particular berth, that berth number 6.
Regarding evidence at the berths, there was some, the point has been made by critics out there that if works are going on at berth 5 and 6 now, like, then evidence of the accident could be misplaced or so forth. Was there, could you answer that at all? If efforts have been made to secure evidence, like by way of taking photographs or so forth?
I cannot give you the specifics with respect to that, but I strongly suspect, yes, what needed to be captured at the time in terms of photographs and other types of that type of what had taken place evidence would have been done, because I have been provided with some photographs, and I am sure that they've done what they're supposed to do, or at least I hope so, let me put it that way.
And they would be the Paria itself?
Well, as I say, I know OSH were there as well. I know whoever was charged with the responsibility of investigating. In speaking to the international investigators that I have over the last couple of days, they do something called a back to source. That is how they look at their investigation. So they really retrace and retract and go through an analysis on a step-by-step basis of what could have taken place, what is likely to have taken place, and they have that whole set of policies and procedures, which is why, quite frankly, we had asked for representation from BP and Shell, because I know that they have done a number of investigations in their worldwide operations, and that they know how to conduct these things.
Would this change the way approvals are given for projects like the kind of work done at that kind of pipeline operation?
I can't speculate, Jules. I don't know if there was anything wrong with the approvals that were given. I prefer let us wait, let us have this commission of inquiry do its job. I'm certain it will be thorough, just by knowing the individuals who are involved, the counsel to the commission. As I say, when you all go and search Mr. Dennis Morrison, you will see the wide expanse of experience. In fact, I was looking at it, he started to practice the year I was born. And these types of things. He is a very, very sharp legal mind with a lot of experience. And Mr. Wilson brings over 25 years in this whole subsea world in oil and gas. So let's wait for them to do their jobs. Is that it? Yeah?
Related questions, if you
yeah.
We heard from the Prime Minister in terms of the issue of oil and gas prices presently, especially the issue of oil situation in Ukraine and the impact it's having on oil prices, and whether the government would have to look at the issue of the price of fuel at the pump. There had been an announced policy proposal for what I could basically floating rate at the fuel pump that will go up and down depending on international prices, but that has not taken place yet. Would now be the time to do that as the economy is still recovering from the pandemic?
You would have heard the Prime Minister. He was very, very clear, very careful and measured in what he said. He alerted us to the population as to what are the potential subsidies that can come about as a result of the rising oil prices, which then influence the fuel prices. It is very volatile right now. At the time when we were having this conversation earlier in the week, there was speculation of oil going to $150 a barrel, and people were saying, look, we're going to, and it could be maintained. I had a specific conversation about that, for example, with the Minister of Finance. It has come back down to about $112, $115 in a matter of a few hours, right? Less than 72 hours. What the Prime Minister's tasked and Ministry of Finance is working with the Ministry of Energy to do is to look at it, to look at the various options. You heard the Prime Minister refer to some of them. If oil is at a certain price, $100.95. These are the prices at the pump. It would be without subsidy. This is how much his subsidy would be. So we're looking at it. The legislation is in place for fuel liberalization. The Prime Minister was also very clear from my listening to him to say the government will work out what burden the taxpayers can carry at this time and come back to the population on it. So I got from that there was not there certainly has been no decision as yet, but there wasn't an intention as articulated by Prime Minister that we will just go complete liberalization. But he has tasked the Minister of Finance and myself to look at it and to make recommendations to Cabinet, which is what we're doing.
Also, we heard from the Prime Minister his position with his statement on CNG in the context of the government's pursuit of electric vehicles, electric buses, and so on. What then is the position with regard to the CNG network? Will there be any continued expansion? Will it be rolled back? Because the Prime Minister's statement was very definitive.
Correct. But it was not new. It wasn't the first time. I, as the Minister of Energy, have been saying that over the last 6 to 9 months. We recognize, and I said it clearly, I think it was at just after we launched a pre-sale gas station that have a number of CNG pumps, and I've repeated it on a number of panel discussions. We're realistic. CNG did not take off in the direction that the previous governments wanted and expected. The technology has changed. This government announced in the budget of last year that there will be no import taxes, etc., VAT, etc., on the importation of electric vehicles. The world is moving in that direction. There's actually a global shortage of electric vehicles right now. But it is because the technology has changed. 5 years ago, an electric vehicle, it was difficult to charge, and there's a lot of complication in the charging. Now you literally have a plug, like a plug for a dryer. You can have a home charging port, charge your electric vehicle. So technology is speeding up. The Prime Minister has mandated that we get electric buses in. We have taken a decision in our global decarbonization commitment to reduce carbon emissions by 30% out of transportation. So we're going to the public transport. So these things are very fluid. We are not going to get rid of the CNG infrastructure. Persons who have gone down that road, we've said it very clearly, we may not expand it apart from Tobago. I was having that discussion with the Tobagonians previously. They may need a CNG specific facility or facilities there, but we are not going to be getting into any expansion. We're focusing now on electric vehicles. We're looking at, out of the Ministry of Energy, putting down more public electric vehicle charging ports in strategic locations across Trinidad and Tobago, and trying to push the country along that way for us to move more to electric vehicles.
Any update on the refinery?
The refinery, we have gotten in, as I had said previously, the 4 proposals from four companies. Those were reviewed. They were discussed with the Minister of Finance and myself. Decisions were taken. They had certain requests for extensions of time and to come and visit. Some of them wanted to visit the refinery because we said, understand the mandate is to restart the refinery. And we're only going to take seriously an entity that comes with a proper proposal to restart the refinery. And we're focused on that, so that process continues. And I believe from what I saw recently from those who are doing the interaction, including with the international consultants, I think they expect that to close off in early April.
And at that point, after that? Then?
Well, let's wait. Again, you know me by now, I am not speculating. So let's wait and see what comes in, and if there's something feasible, let's pursue it. So, yeah, yes, Joe.
Taking the opportunity,
of course.
The talks right now, what we've seen reported internationally between officials of the U.S. government, the government of Venezuela, in terms of potential easing of sanctions, all again as a result of the Russia-Ukraine situation, the war, the invasion there by Russia, and so on. Could that, depending on the outcome of those talks, have any particular benefit to Trinidad and Tobago in terms of oil or gas?
I smile because I'm thinking of the conversations that the Honorable Prime Minister and myself have from time to time. I want to assure the population through you all that this is not a government that is sleeping, nor it is a government that is not connected and always looking for opportunities for Trinidad and Tobago. There were questions asked as to why the Prime Minister and myself went to Doha, Qatar, the other day. It is because that was to sit at tables, including a table with leaders, both at the head of government stage and at the ministerial level, with the persons who hold over 71% of the gas reserves in the world, including Venezuela. We are very active all of the time in pursuing things that can benefit Trinidad and Tobago. So what we're seeing here, I can assure the population, we have already been having necessary discussions and already pursuing what needs to be pursued to benefit Trinidad and Tobago, particularly in the gas area. And there will be more coming out of that in the not too distant future. We are constantly doing it, and I always have to smile when people say, well, the government should think about, like there was one article yesterday that Young should go up to Washington, D.C. next week. The Prime Minister should tell him, drop everything and go up to Washington, D.C. next week. I was already planning to be in Washington, D.C. next week. The Prime Minister, myself, and the government are always looking at opportunities and angles for Trinidad and Tobago. And we will continue to pursue that and hopefully come with good news.
Question. And going back to what happened at Paria and the tragedy there, in terms of the families of the diners, in terms of support, any sense of the level of support being given from, let's say, at the very least, Paria to those families?
Paria, from that Saturday, when I went to the Paria facilities and told the Paria management, make sure and reach out to give the support. As I said, there's a firm of counselors right there. I think I read out one of these press conferences that, it was in Parliament, in answer to a question last week, Friday, that there was another consultant, Mr. Hanif Benjamin, a trauma expert, was also retained. So I know Paria has made those reach outs, if I can use such a phrase, to the family and stuff. But as I said previously, it really is up to them as to whether they would receive it, and I don't want to go any further than that. But Paria has been told, and I know they have tried and will hopefully continue to try, that whatever support that can be provided, it will be provided by Paria. Okay? Thank you all very much. Please take care.